Good morning, everybody. I'm Babz Rawls Ivy.
And I'm Jeff Grant.
Good morning. Welcome to Criminal Justice Insider, sponsored by the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
Our dear sponsor. How are you, Babz?
Good. Happy snow day 286. And
it's cold out there.
It is. But you know what? We're not Texas, so there's that.
This is true. This is true.
But we're all right. Well, everybody's good.
Definitely prayers for everyone down in the South. I know they're having a rough time.
Any news, Jeff? Anything you want to talk about? This is the part, everybody, where we do our housekeeping, our little chit chat, and then we jump into our topic.
Let's see. Chloe and I wrote an article for the American Bar Association Criminal Justice Magazine.
Yay!
And that will be coming out on April 1st in their spring edition. So we're very excited to have been asked by them to, our good friend Elizabeth Kelly out in Spokane invited us to write for them. And we're pushing out a criminal justice concept that, when we get closer, I'll talk about it. And it feels like everybody is stuck in the house podcasting and asking each other to be on their podcasts. So
I've been on like a couple this week.
Oh my God. It's like everybody's got a podcast, including this one.
Yes.
So there's a lot of that going around and a lot of good stuff on the website, prisonist.org. And so that's it. You know, nothing overly exciting, but that's good news. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very good. I think I'm going to join the International Board of Love 146, which is, I don't know if y'all know Love 146, but they are anti-child trafficking international organization. They exist to eradicate sexual exploitation of children around the world. And so I guess they've been vetting me for about a year now. And I had a conversation with them the other night. And I think I'm going to be voted to their board next week. And
wow.
I couldn't be happier because, child trafficking and the sexual exploitation of children is near and dear to my heart. As a child that was trafficked, I feel like I'm in a good position to help raise awareness and to get in the fight to eradicate this for children. So,
well, for those of you who don't know, Babz was on our other podcast, White Collar Week, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she talked all about her childhood, and it was powerful, Babz. And I applaud you for your courage and to talk about it all and to become the magnificent woman you've become and overcoming all that.
Thank you very much, Jeff Grant. I'm just trying to take my cues from you.
As a magnificent woman, I understand.
As magnificent.
So why don't you introduce our guests?
Oh my God, we have some of the best people in the game. It is so nice to see Venetia Michelson. I just enjoy talking to her. She's one of the smartest women in the room, in any room. So it's very nice to see her. It's nice to see Worth Rices. Is that how you pronounce that? How do you pronounce your name, girl?
Whenever I'm the worst at changing my name on.
And an old dog like me, I got to go with what I see. Bianca.
That's the famous Bianca Tylik.
Yes, Tylik, and Jay Wu. And so they're here today. Now they're each individually in their own right are criminal justice superstars, freedom fighters. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about who they are, but y'all know them, you love them, you know the work that they do. They're here today so that we can talk about the cost of prison phone calls, on the system, on families, and they are out there raising awareness and trying to stop this practice. And so this is a very important conversation. So yes. And you know what? If you get Jeff's emails, Lord knows you got all their background information.
So Bianca, why don't you kick us off? Because I know there's high hopes for some real traction this session in the Connecticut legislature. And this is something that you and now Martin Looney and Senator Looney, excuse me, and Representative Josh Elliott, and certainly Venice and Jaywu and a lot of other folks in Connecticut are working hard towards. So is this going to happen this session? Why don't you tell us?
Sure. So I guess just for background for folks who may not be super familiar with the issue, we've been fighting for a bill to stop charging families who have incarcerated loved ones for communication with their loved ones. And so to specifically make prison phone calls free for families and incarcerated folks, as well as all forms of communication, including the new forms of communication that are entering now around video calls and electronic messages, like communication, those types of things. And so we first introduced that bill in 2019. And we actually were able to get it pretty far in that very first year, all the way out of two joint committees, Judiciary and Appropriations, and all the way down to the floor. And then we started just on that last 2 days. We were actually in an omnibus bill, and the whole omnibus bill blew up for unrelated reasons. So it left us very little time to run it as a standalone into chambers. But we had a commitment at that time from Democratic leadership that they would take this up and it would be resolved in 2020, unfortunately. And we were on track to do that in 2020. We knew we had the votes in the House. And then unfortunately, 2020 took a turn that none of us were expecting. And because of COVID, the legislative session was halted and suspended essentially for most of the rest of the year, with the exception of a few small things that were managed. And so now we're back. It's 2021. And we are definitely continuing to push the bill. This year, we are excited the bill has been sponsored by Senate President Marty Looney, which is amazing. And, Senator Looney is a former public defender, so I think he really understands this issue deeply, and not just as a criminal justice issue, but an economic justice issue, a racial justice issue, a gender justice issue. And so that's, for us, exciting. We continue to have the incredible championship of Representative Elliott. And we absolutely do think
let me jump in real quick. So tell us what the problem is. For those who are tuning in now, and we're talking about this, what is the problem? What is the issue that we are fighting?
To speak on that. I think, I don't want to jump in there too much. I think, Jo, you're this is an intimate issue for you and for your community.
No problem, Bianca. I could definitely do that. And I just want to thank everybody for allowing me and everybody else to speak on this platform about this issue. One of the reasons why this issue, to me, why it jumps out is because it's personal to me. I was incarcerated before. And while I was incarcerated, one of the biggest means of communicating and just staying up to par and just having my spirits up was being able to access the phone and talk to my loved ones. A lot of times when you're incarcerated, one of the few people that treat you like a human and humanize you during the hard situations is when you're able to get on the phone and talk to your loved ones that's on the outside. So to me and everybody else that's part of this coalition, we recognize that being able to stay in constant contact with your loved ones while you're incarcerated is one of the biggest things that you can do, as far as to staying in contact with your family, even to getting out and being successful when you're released, is having that support.
You say stay in contact with your family members. Are you saying that the prisons don't have phones? What is the issue that we are fighting for? I think we're talking about the cost of the calls that puts a hardship on families. What is the issue? Help people understand what it is happening.
And why don't you describe the actual experience, what it is inside the Connecticut prisons? I mean, how do you are there phones? How do you make the calls? How do you get billed for the calls? Explain the nuts and bolts.
No problem. how the setup is, how everything is set up is basically people on the outside would have to put money on their account in order to talk to their loved one that's inside. And these calls range for $5 a minute as soon as the call's accepted. So basically what happens is the calls, people struggling, working everyday people are forced to have to include in their budget a phone bill that they really can't afford. I mean, we've had people, and there's a lot of people that we've talked to, you know, they just literally can't afford the phone calls, but the importance of staying in contact and supporting their loved one while they're inside overrides that. So they have to compromise. Some people are not paying their light bill, not paying their rent. This is real stuff that people are doing to stay in contact
So
with
are you saying the cost of the
support.
calls are exorbitant to the point that they rival that of your other bills? Like, paint us a picture. How much are we talking? Like you said, $5 a minute. We're just trying to get a sense. So when people are listening to this conversation, they know, because because, you know, if you just listen to this on its own merit, you're like, okay, I could see paying for a phone call. What's the problem? But what you're paying for the call is the problem, right?
Yeah, but we are also asking for free calls. So we are also saying that we don't want people to pay anything. So we could, you know, like that's very, I want to be very clear about what the solution is. So to J.O.'s point, the way that these, you know, calls are done is, as J.O. said, families need to put money onto an account. Right now, the reason when we say free, think about it. Families are paying for phone calls. They already have a phone bill. So in order to, they're paying a second phone bill. Right? Like what they're actually doing is they're saying, oh, I have my Verizon or my TNT or my Sprint, you know, phone line already. And I can't use that to just seamlessly, you know, communicate with my loved one inside. I have to put money on a second bill so that my loved one inside can make a phone call. So first thing that people should know is that families can't actually call inside. You can only receive calls. And so you put money on your account so that you can receive those calls. Now, in terms of where Connecticut stacks, Connecticut is currently 50th out of all 50 states in the affordability of phone calls. It is literally dead last. It has the highest rates in prisons in the country. In fact, last year, Arkansas was the only state who had higher rates. And then during COVID, Arkansas decided to reduce its rates because it understood that, you know, there was that families were struggling through COVID. And so Arkansas addressed its rates and Connecticut did nothing. And so Connecticut now, the current rates, I think J.O. might be citing rates from earlier, but the current rates are range up to about 32.5 cents per minute, which makes a 15-minute phone call roughly $5. So if you take, you know, a 15-minute phone call once or twice a day, right, from your loved one who's inside, and you pay essentially $5 for that, you're paying between like $150, $300 bill a month, right? That's probably more than your cell phone bill, right? That's like, and so it certainly does rival several of those other bills. But I think the benefits of going to fully free, right, are also really dramatic, and I think Venice is probably best suited to really speak on those around how it impacts the community.
Okay. So Venetia?
Yeah. Thank you, Bianca, and always thank you, J.O., for sharing your experiences. So the issue of phone bills is a fantastic crystallization of the sort of struggle that we have within this prison industrial complex, because it impacts absolutely every piece of our criminal justice system, right? So to what J.O. was talking about, how the people who are behind the walls are struggling in all of these different ways, and to remain human, as he said, to remain feeling as though you can manage all of the sort of stress and frustration and fear and sort of anomie, if you will, of being inside, being connected to your loved ones is absolutely paramount to anything else, right? So for the people that are incarcerated, it's incredibly important. For the people who are at home, it's incredibly important to be able to connect to their loved ones, because, you know, everybody needs their parent, everybody needs their loved ones. And just because someone has done something that's gotten them behind bars doesn't mean that their kids don't want to be told a story at night, or don't want their parent at their birthday, right? Or to be able to talk to their parent at their birthday. Let alone every day to say like, hey, this is how I did on my math test, or hey, I'm struggling with something that's happening at school, or hey, I'm having trouble paying the bills. Can you make me feel like it's going to get better, right? So the people on the inside, the people on the outside. And even if you don't care about the love that people have for each other and the need for connection, maybe you care about taxpayers, right? Because as people feel more connected when they're inside, they come out more able to sort of acclimate to being outside, because almost everyone that's incarcerated right now is going to get out. They're not in there forever and ever rotting away. They're coming, you know, if we don't treat them very well, but they are going to come out. And once they come out, if they have connections to loved ones, if they have this sort of ability to feel loved and feel human, then when they come out, they're less likely to get engaged in substance abuse. They're more likely to stay outside instead of engaging in criminal behavior again and going back inside. They're more likely to be able to get jobs. They're more likely to be able to stay connected with their families when they get out. So if they're not going back inside, not engaging in substance abuse, if they're getting jobs, then we end up with happy, or not, you know, like sort of citizens who are able to participate in the world, to become taxpayers themselves, and we're not paying literally tens of thousands of dollars per year to cage people, right? And frankly, even if you don't care about taxpayers, maybe you care about the people who work inside the prison facilities, because when people are allowed to connect with their loved ones, they're less likely to engage in infractions on the inside, which allows for a better life on the inside. It's not a great life, it's not fantastic, but it improves sort of the living experience for absolutely everyone inside. So this is literally a win-win-win-win-win all the way across the board. There's no reason why anyone should be against this, except that we should be eradicating prisons, right? But if we have to have caged people, this is something that's absolutely no-brainer.
Wow, Venice, that's fantastic. You should be a criminal justice professor.
Imagine that.
Imagine. When I was in prison, of course, calls were critical, but when they were most critical was when Lynn, my wife, it was before we were married, or my two young daughters would come visit me, and they're on the road, and it was a 3 or 4 hour drive all the way out to Pennsylvania. And I was freaking out because I was afraid, like, what if the car broke down? What if they had to check into a hotel or a motel somewhere near? And I was scared to death. And the fact that I could make a call to them on their cell phones while they were in the car and just connect just for a few minutes. It soothed me for sure, but I know it soothed them too. I'm dad, you know, they needed to hear my voice. And I think that's what I'm having trouble pronouncing your name. It's J-O?
Yes, J-O.
I apologize if I've been mispronouncing it. So I think that's what J-O was talking about, right? J-O, is that kind of connection between the family, and it's very intimate. It's private.
It's almost like one of the most important things while you're inside, to be able to talk to people that you care about on the outside. Because a lot of times when you're in there, like we've said on the phone, you're faced with a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that happen inside that makes you feel inadequate, that makes you feel hopeless. You know, so being able to speak to people on the outside that really care about you, and for them to give you that voice of encouragement, even if it's for 10 seconds of somebody saying, I believe in you and I love you, that means a lot. That'll change a person's whole 23 hours, 23 and 60 seconds they have left in a day. That'll change their whole day. And, you know, I've been incarcerated with a lot of people that didn't have that barrier of having their loved one being able to pay for their phone calls, it was too big for their family. So they just didn't have no connection with the outside. And that affected how they moved in the inside and how much investment they had on them going home and being successful. You know, I could, from people that talk to their loved ones on a regular basis, I can hear the difference in their conversations when we were inside. They'll be more optimistic about going home and doing productive things, where somebody that's not talking to somebody on the inside and not being encouraged when they come home, their conversations will be, oh, I'm going home to do criminal activity. And that's what they're looking forward to. You can see the difference in people inside when they're connected with somebody on the outside and getting that encouragement.
And it's not particularly easy to make phone calls from inside. Like, is it a scheduled system? Like, paint a picture to us about what that looks like. How do you all have opportunity? How do you have opportunity to make calls? When I was inside, we had set times. Like, you just couldn't use the phone whenever. There were set times when you could use the phone in the morning and in the evenings, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of women. Everybody wants to make their phone calls home. I wasn't cleared for phone calls until the very end, that I was about to leave. So I didn't have that talk to my loved ones. I was there for a good period amount of time before I could even access a call. So paint us a picture, Jay Wu, of what that looks like for someone on the inside.
Well, it depends on what facility you're in across the state, but definitely in the 2s and in the 4s, people are in cells, so they're more confined. So they only come out an hour and a half or an hour in the morning and an hour at night. So those are the time frames that you have to use the phone. And you can imagine when it's a tier full of 60, 70 people or whatever the amount is, and there's only 4 phones on the whole, there's 4 phones on one tier, 4 phones on the other. So it's 8 phones. Basically, people are wrestling to talk to their loved ones. And that's even compounding that there's been a lot of lockdowns and a lot of distance from people coming out of the cells and even having that opportunity. Even visiting people was big, but that's been taken away because of COVID and whatnot. So that's another way that people are being exploited, because now the only way to see your actual loved one, you have to depend on these mechanisms where it's taken away. Basically, all of this stuff is contributing to people being distanced from their families, and it's going to affect people coming home, because if you're not able to keep these lines of communications open, I mean, eight phones for 100 people, somebody's not using the phone. Somebody's not connecting with their loved one. Somebody's not hearing that voice of encouragement that they need to hear to get them through the day. And that getting compounded on days and days and days and not hearing that encouragement, and that's the reality that people are in. When they're in dorms, they have more opportunity to use the phone, but it always comes back to the point of, can my loved ones afford to put money on the phone? Can my loved ones afford? That's what the point always comes back to.
So Bianca, is there anywhere in the country that people have access to free calls?
Yes.
Are there any states that do that?
So statewide systems, no. Connecticut would be the first, but there are a few cities now that have passed similar legislation, and those cities are of comparable size. So in particular, the first city to pass such legislation was New York City in 2018. The system is not much smaller than Connecticut. So just because New York City is a pretty large city, so it has a pretty large jailing system, and Connecticut being a relatively small state. So you're kind of looking at sort of a jail and prison system that is comparable in size. And New York City made phone calls free in 2018. The process was incredibly seamless in the sense that there were no, issues that necessarily occurred inside the facilities. It was really safe and efficient sort of transition to fully free. People were still allowed all the same amount and number of calls. And in fact, to J.O.'s point, what we ended up seeing was a nearly 40% increase in call volume overnight. that folks from inside made. And a lot of those calls obviously went to family members, but a number of those calls, a pretty big percentage of those calls went to social services, which was a very interesting sort of aspect. We saw a lot of the social services organizations reached out to us and they said, oh, we're getting a lot of calls. And you know what? At the end, everybody was happy about that because like, that's great, right? If folks inside are actually reaching out, like using their free calls to reach out to social services, that's that is a win-win that we definitely wanted to see. So that happened in New York City back in 2018. 2019, San Francisco joined and also made an announcement that it was moving to free. Implementation usually takes a few months, up to a year. So both those cities actually went into effect, New York City in 2019 and San Francisco in 2020. And San Francisco saw a similar increase in roughly 40% of call volume. New York City families saved nearly $10 million a year by the system going to free. And it only cost the city about $2.5 million, which for New York compared to, for example, the New York City Department of Corrections budget is $1.4 billion. So when you think about $2.5 million compared to $1.4 billion, it was a drop in the bucket. I mean, it was literally described by a council member staff as a rounding error. Is what it would have taken to actually get it done. And it did, right? And so in San Francisco, families saved $1.1 million a year. If we managed to pass this bill here in Connecticut residents, families here in Connecticut will save nearly $14 million a year.
What seems incongruous, since I've been a part of this movement for a few years with you guys now, is that when you first brought it to my attention, the Connecticut budget was in deficit. We had a fiscal crisis in Connecticut, and you could kind of see where there wouldn't really be any traction for anything that was gonna put more costs on the budget. But unless I'm missing something, and please bring me up to date, we've had a positive budget. We've had a surplus for the last 2 years. We had a rainy day fund of $1.5 billion or something like that. So how are they justifying what you just called a rounding error? How are they justifying putting that on the back of poor people? So
yeah, I think also one thing that is nestled in there, but we haven't talked about, is that the state makes a tremendous amount of money on this. So like when we talk about these calls, it's $14 million that families are spending every year on phone calls. It's not just a corporation, which there is a Texas-based corporation named Securus that is collecting much of the money, and that is actually the state vendor, but they pay the state kickbacks for that contract, what they call commissions. And so they pay the state a 68% commission. So what actually happens is the state takes home almost $8 million, and then the company takes home a little less than $6 million. And that's hence how you get up to this like $14 million figure. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, when the state negotiates this contract, it's negotiating a profit sharing contract against its own residents, right? Like it's in partnership with the corporation to exploit the people, right? And the residents of Connecticut. And so the biggest hurdle around this bill is not actually the cost of service, which we believe will be around $1.5 million to provide fully free phone calls to everyone who's incarcerated. So $1.5 million compared to families paying 14 right now. It's a 10 times difference. The biggest hurdle is the loss in revenue to the state. And so Jeff, to your point, it's so important to bring up that the state is currently in a surplus, because why are you creating a regressive tax on those who can least afford it? I mean, literally, you are creating a situation where disproportionately Black, brown, and families with low income are being assessed more money so that the state can put it in its budget. And that $8 million is used for a variety of things that have nothing to do with prison. They are 31 probation officer jobs are funded through that money, right? CGIS, this like data system, is funded through that money. Like nothing that benefits folks inside. Not that that would necessarily be the matter, but literally unrelated, right? And so we're using these families to create extra money for the state, which is essentially tax. And by the way, if we did that in Greenwich, I don't think it'd fly, right? Somehow those conversations go a bit different, right? When we create taxes just for those, like the wealthy taxes, right? We have like huge upheaval for everybody who can levy a few dollars to a campaign. But families, you know, with incarcerated loved ones, they don't have campaign dollars to give you, right?
So who are the legislative, who is on your legislative team? Who in the legislature is supporting this, brokering this, championing this? Who is fighting for this? And has it, I imagine, has already come out of committee and it's up for a vote?
No, it's not at a committee. We're really early in the session.
Okay.
So bills are just being introduced and getting language right now.
Okay.
So the bill has been introduced by Senator Looney. So as I mentioned earlier, the last 2 years we were moving the bill through the House, and we have overwhelming support in the House. In this year, we're going to be moving the bill through the Senate because that's where we, need to sort of do a little bit more work. But the biggest champion, of the bill has been Representative Josh Elliott, who, introduced the bill with us the first time around, and for the last few years has really been the one moving through every single caucus and with all his comrades and saying, please support this bill, please support this bill. And, is the reason Senator Looney picked up the bill. But we've had great support, right, from senators like Gary Winfield and Robin Porter.
Our usual freedom fighters.
Exactly, like everybody who you expect, but again, it's been a fight that really, thankfully, as people get information. I will tell you this, I had without naming names, I had a Republican representative stop me in the elevator in the LOB last year. And she had like a very active, like she stopped me, not the other way around. Usually it's us stopping the legislators. And she said, you have the bill with the phone calls and prisons thing. And I was like, yes, that's us. And she said, oh, I'm supportive now. And it was like very interesting. And she goes, yeah, I talked to some families and I talked to some children's advocates, right? And she was like, totally changed my mind on this whole thing. I get it. And she was like super moved, right? Like at the end of the day, we do have bipartisan support. I think it's important for people to know that. And that we've also polled. And we know that not only that we should have more, that the reality is that this is a bipartisan issue that people in the state of Connecticut across the aisle support. Residents support overwhelmingly. We have over 70% support in the public. So we should be able to move our legislators. We just need our legislators to understand that.
So the only sticking point, and to Jeff's raising the awareness around, we're in a good place fiscally. So is this the only sticking point that we just don't want to lose that income? Is that
it's
the
yeah, I mean, it's really that simple, right? Babz, you're kind of is that it? It's yeah, it's really in some ways it. And I so the news that I was gonna share. So I don't know if folks saw, but the governor put out his budget last week, excuse me. And in the budget, we were really surprised because Governor Lamont actually gave us $5.5 million in his budget in 2020. We were hopeful about that. That felt like a solid allocation towards this $8 million that they make, and that the legislature could make up the difference. This year he gave us just $1 million. I mean, because the 2020 budget never really passed with all the other things going on. So this year, 2021, we get $1 million in the budget, and we're confused. We're what happened to the other 4.5? And turns out when you read the budget that it actually actively says, oh, this 1 million is meant to address the gap in commissions that the state is going to receive when they renegotiate the contract. And so the intention was that they were going to renegotiate the contract to have slightly lower rates. They were still going to take their 68% commission, but because the rates were slightly lower, they were going to lose $1 million. So that was the governor's grand plan. And what we found out yesterday is that they have, in fact, renegotiated the contract. That's the news. It should be probably hitting out today. And drum roll, they've renegotiated the contract to fall from the rates right now range from 23 to 32.5 cents a minute. We were saying that earlier, to 19 cents a minute. So, oh my God. I saw this and I was like, you've got to be kidding. You've got to be kidding.
Sorry, but
it's laughable. Like you see J.O.'s face. It's laughable. It's a slap in the face. I mean, like, I'm not kidding you when I said earlier that Connecticut is dead last in the country in affordability of phone calls, 50th. This is going to raise Connecticut to 45th. And the governor wants applause. This is a clown show.
Well, let's give the governor applause.
So what do you do now when you get that news? What happens?
J.O. releases an op-ed slamming the governor. This is a ridiculous. I mean, what I can say is, it's something I'm sharing this first, and everyone's hearing this first, because we just got the news, and I haven't even been able to share it with the whole coalition yet. So people are going to be hearing, and we actually have to have that conversation, because we were just talking, earlier this week. The coalition meets on a regular basis, and so we just met on Wednesday, and we were discussing the governor's budget. We were already frustrated about, needing to take action, and I think this only further demonstrates the need to do that. J.O., I don't know if you have a reaction to that news.
And also, I just want to say that our former commissioner Scott Semple just texted me. He's watching the show, and he wants us to talk about tablets. So let's just make sure we preserve a couple of minutes, because this is something new in our state, and I'm sure it's something that's costing people a lot of money, and that's kind of buried somewhere.
Under the guise of it being a gift, right? Under the guise of it being, so generous.
All right.
Yeah.
So
what
Venice,
about tablets?
Venice, why don't we take a little detour there and make Commissioner Semple happy? So you can.
Can I just get J.O.'s response to this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Before we jump to tablets, because tablets will take another 20 minutes.
Go ahead, Joe.
Definitely. It's horrible. I mean, even with the tablets, but I just wanted to add, this situation is so crazy in Connecticut with the phones that we've had to start a hotline to support people inside. I mean, we've literally had to get donations from the public to really create an entity where people are able to talk to people on the inside that's giving them encouragement, that's able to connect them with their families and stuff like that, because that entity is needed. It's being neglected, and just by the state's movements, we're supporting Securus and supporting all these other entities. They're basically saying in a nutshell that they don't care about the success of people getting out of prison and staying connected with their families. So we started a hotline where we're collecting donated funds, and we're basically putting it on to English and a Spanish line so people can stay in contact. Because if the state is not going to take responsibility for this, then we, the people, have to take this into our own hands and create this entity so this can exist. And that's what we created.
Now, does that, so what you created, J.O., is talk a little bit about, give me a few more minutes about that entity that you've created. Like, what does it do?
Well, I didn't create it personally.
I know you didn't create it personally, exactly. But talk a little bit about what it does.
What it does is Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week, people are able to call from the inside and talk about the conditions that are inside, some of the hardships they're going through, and some support any support that they need. And they're able to do that on a consistent basis from 5:30 to 9:30 every day. And all of the money, we collect donations from people from anywhere to provide this service for people inside. And the calls range from a whole bunch of things, from people needing help with their case as far as them not having access to the court, to people not being able to talk to their family members because they can't afford to put money on their books. I mean, the call on the Securus account. One of the other entities that we also were doing was putting money on people's Securus accounts, which is $25 a month. And that's all donated funds also. It's just a matter of this is so necessary that we had to go over and beyond to provide this service for people. And just like this campaign is almost like a no-brainer to be a part of this, because we see the significance in eroding the phone calls, families having to pay for phone calls. I mean, it's such a huge burden on just families staying together and staying connected while they're going through hard times. And also for a family member and loved ones, especially during COVID, that are underemployed, can't provide just basic rent. So that's basically this entity was created because of that. And I just want to give the phone numbers out to anybody that's incarcerated. Definitely give this phone number to their loved ones. They can call, collect. The English line is 203-430-0462. And the Spanish line is 203-214-4787. And they can call those lines 7 days a week.
Okay, so let's get to the tablets while we have a little, so we have some time. No, don't be sorry. It's fine. We have time. We can get it in. So who wants to jump in and help us understand the tablet situation, the tablet gift?
So Venice, you want to launch with that one?
Yeah, I can talk. Bianca is just such an incredible expert on all of this and speaks about it so beautifully. But I'll just give a little bit of an overview. They started out with a pilot program in one of the facilities here in the state, giving out free tablets where people could use them to connect, right? To use them to email or send an e-card or something like that. But for every little thing that they do, it costs money. And so it's sort of in the guise of it being a gift, but it not only does it continue to drain money out of people's accounts, which again comes from family members on the outside, but in addition, it's sort of a sneaky way. We've already been curbing in-person visits. Right. We've already sort of finding ways to cut down the number of ways that people can connect with their families. And these tablets are yet another way to do that, to monetize love, to monetize connection, and to cut down on people's ability to make those connections. Right. So if there are tablets, then why do you need to actually have in-person visits? You don't need to do them anymore because you'll be able to, use the tablets to connect. So it's a really insidious way to pretend that you're doing something right for people inside, when in fact you're just continuing to bleed our communities dry. And as Bianca said, it's our most needful communities, right? These are people who are already adversely impacted far more than the rest of us by COVID, by poverty, by unemployment, by systematic racism and all of these different ways.
Help me understand. So if you're inside, they give you a tablet. And then what happens? You're to what?
I'm going to defer to Bianca on this one. Bianca knows far better, and Jo as well for the nuts and bolts.
Yeah. So essentially, how it works is pretty much they're right now rolling out tablets. They basically hand everybody inside a tablet, and
they do in schools, like they give kids tablets and Chromebooks in school. Okay.
Correct. Right. So they would hand out tablets to people. And then you need to create an account, like your family needs to create an account for you that has, again, money on it, right? So that you can do many of the things on the tablet. So for example, you can send electronic messages to people. They like to call it email. It functions nothing like an email. You have to actually attach a stamp to the electronic message to this quote. You need to include another stamp. If you want to include an attachment, like a picture, you need to include another stamp. Me on the outside, if I
get you pay for these stamps, like these stamps cost money.
Yes, these stamps cost.
Out of here.
Right. And this is what they're calling email. And you're like, wait, hold on. I can make a Gmail account for free. Like,
I think the right word is extortion.
right.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And I know that,
I mean extortion, not email. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Extortion mail.
Extortion mail. Exactly. That's what we're going to start calling it from now on. But it's like, yeah, exactly. There's, they have videograms. Videograms cost a few dollars, right? Like all these different things on there. And so it's funny. They always talk about the free tablets, right? So I just want to make 2 quick points. One is every single time I lose my credit card, okay? Every single time my bank overnights me a new credit card for free. Right? I don't pay for that. American Express, it just shows up in the mail the next day. Why? Because it's a vehicle. Like they need me to have it for them to make money.
Yeah.
The same thing is true with tablets. So when they're like, oh, but we gave it to you for free, it's like, but what do you think I'm going to do with it? Right? Like the whole point is for you to then spend on it. Right? So that's one. I think the other thing to know, and I just want to acknowledge this because it's the difficulty, is that this is complicated. Like the issue of the tablets is complicated, and I don't want to pretend it's not. And what I mean by that is prisons, as many people on this call know, are devoid of technology and have been for years and years and years and years, right? Like we've forgotten about folks inside when it comes to technology, and some people are serving 10-year bids, 20-year bids, you name it, and they're coming out into the field or into the world and know nothing, right? They've never seen a tablet. They've never really done anything and the world will leave them, right? Like pass them by because they're left in an age, and we know how fast technology changes. So I want to acknowledge that there's a, people want technology inside, right? The issue is that we shouldn't be allowing the same companies that have been preying on our communities through phone calls and other means to be the ones to introduce that technology. Like that is not the right answer. And so I just want to shout out, there's an organization that's actually based in Connecticut, a first of its kind called Emilio, that is trying to create new technologies to bring into prisons at completely no cost, where like messaging and things like communication video calls would come at no cost to people who are incarcerated. And so thinking about what are the innovative solutions we can come up with, how do we talk to the tech world or whatever, and come up with some kind of solutions that aren't dependent on these predatory companies.
Okay. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
We have about 5 minutes left. I just want to talk a little bit about the language that you've used with Tom Gores, or is it Tom Gores, Platinum Equity, Detroit Pistons. Go.
Oh, my arch nemesis. Tom, so for those who aren't familiar, as we were saying earlier, Securus is the prison telecom vendor for the state of Connecticut. They, in fact, own 40% of the national market of prison and jail telecom. They also own the subsidiary of JPay, which many people will also find familiar. They are the ones behind the tablets and all of that. And so Securus is owned by a private equity firm named Platinum Equity. It's actually one of their biggest and largest and most critical investments. They bought the company in 2017 for a resounding $1.6 billion. That's how much they bought this company that owns 40% of the prison.
Crime pays. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Crime
right,
pays.
Exactly. So they bought it back in 2017, and Platinum Equity is owned. The founder and CEO is Tom Gores, who is also the owner of the Detroit Pistons. And so when you start thinking this stuff just, again, it becomes like laughable, but you're like, wow, okay, cool. So the Pistons owner, who's worth $6 billion, is right now preying on families with incarcerated loved ones who we know don't have anywhere near the same means.
Right, who looks majority like the people on his teams.
Right. Yeah, well, and that's exactly the thing we've been saying for some time, right? Is that he in fact owns the team in the city with the highest percentage of residents who are Black, right? So like highest number like I said, a proportion of Black residents. And so, he's out here screaming about BLM, supporting his team and his players. He's changing the Pistons logo to like a Black logo and all these things. Meanwhile, BLM, Movement for Black Lives, is calling for the defunding of police. But what is he doing? He's actually taking money out of the hands of large, disproportionately Black and brown communities, and he's giving it to the police. Like he's literally reverse robbing him.
And so do the players know this, or are they deliberately and willfully ignorant?
Well, this is also the same basketball team that walked off the court when they lost the championship and refused to shake Michael Jordan's hand. So I think that's something there is.
Yeah. You speak of your age.
I can't blame.
You speak of your age by talking about.
I was gonna say, I don't think I can blame Tom for that. I don't think he owned the team at the time. But yeah, he
Jeff's not bitter.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not bitter.
Babz, to answer your question about players, like at this point, players know. And I say that to say, like, we've made a lot of noise, which, like, just kind of came to a helm here in December. We took a full page ad out in the New York Times. It's like, in the sports section, like on the Sunday Times, like, it gets no less quiet, right? Or louder than that, right? It's just like, well, here it is. And it was, it was all over the news. He also got removed from the LACMA board. Like we pushed, the LACMA is the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. It's like, one of our great art institutions in this country. And we pushed and demanded that he be removed from the board of the LACMA. And in 29 days, he was forced to resign. So like, it is like, it's not a secret now.
So you are his biggest fan.
Oh yeah. He loves me.
So we only have a couple more minutes. Why don't we just go make sure that we have contact information, that people know how to reach the movement? What can they do to help? Take it away.
So yeah, so I would say a few things. One, and I definitely want to make sure Jo gets information for Connecticut Bail Fund out there too. So Worth Rises, we are helping, to spearhead this initiative in Connecticut, working alongside more than 20 local Connecticut organizations. You can visit our site at worthrises.org or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Worth Rises. We also run a site that is all related to prison phone calls called connectfamiliesnow.com. So we encourage people to go there. You will see more about the Connecticut campaign. And then if you, are interested, want to reach out, anything of that sort, please do. You want to support the campaign in any way. You have a friend over there in Hartford, you have resources and financing that you want to dedicate, all of that, please just reach out at info@worthrises.org. Contact us. So that's how you can reach, I think, the group. And just so everybody knows, the coalition here in Connecticut is the Connecticut Connecting Families Coalition.
Wonderful. Jo, why don't you give us those phone numbers again for anybody who needs assistance?
Definitely. We run a hotline. Again, we run a hotline Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week, 5:30 to 9:30. The English phone number is 203-430-0462. And the Spanish line is 203-214-4787. And our contact information is, you can reach me at jewu@connecticutbailfund.org, or you can go to info@connecticutbailfund.org. And you can like us on Facebook. A lot of the information, every update we have is on Facebook. And we also, all of these funds for this line to exist is donated funds. And you can go on our website to see how you can support this resource that we have for people inside.
Lovely. And Venice, when you're not on the road between Connecticut and New Jersey, where can people connect with you at Montclair State?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. My name is very Googleable. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, they can email me at my Montclair email address. It's michelsonv@montclair.edu, just with the spelling above. I'm happy to communicate about this, obviously, and obviously the connection between how academia can support activism. So yes, absolutely.
Wonderful.
This was a good conversation. I appreciate it very much.
Yes, so you'll keep us up to date because this is heading towards votes, and there's going to be hearings and public comments. Yeah, we're going to head
toward the hearings. So we would love for, that's another way people can jump in and support, is that they can show up to the hearing. And we'd love to, make sure that our voices and the community's voice and support is loud and clear.
Would love to. I'm doing a host of shows with the Connecticut legislator. So I had Pat Dillon on the other day. I wish I would have had this information prior, because I certainly would have slid it to her. Mm-hmm. We were talking about COVID stuff, but I would have found a way to slip this in. We talked to Robin Porter. I've had Robin on, and I've had Gary on. I'm going to have them on again. So I'm gonna slip this in everywhere I can when I start talking to these legislative folks, so that it's on their hearts and minds. I was like, well, how would you feel if we charged you to make phone calls to, where you got to make calls to?
2021. What are we talking about?
It's time.
Yes,
it's long overdue.
Time. Thank you so much for your
thank you
time
all
today.
For coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Jeff. This was a good conversation.
Babz,
thank you, Chloe.
This is a great one in the books, Babz. I'm so glad we could be of service to our community this way. Really makes me proud to be able to do it.
Yes.
And I guess that's it for this week.
Thank you, Community Foundation. Thank you, Lynn Springer. Thank you, Andrew Kaplan. Thank you, Harry Groves.
And we're out.
We'll see y'all soon.
Love you, Babz.
Hi, this is Babz Rawls-Ivy from New Haven, Connecticut, and you're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, streaming live at newhavenindependent.org.